this, which is exciting. Last time we saw you, Super Booth, you had a kind of prototype version of the Terra, and this is now very close to production. Is that right?
Yes, really. So this is how mass production Terra will look. So we developed this shape and did final layout for all things. So yes, this is how Terra will look. So, but it will have different colors of the wood.
Right. So this is actually a wood case. It looks like there's kind of. It's not a single piece because you can see the joins where you're putting.
Yes, yes.
I used to work as a furniture maker, so I know this is oak.
Yes, so. This is oak.
Yeah.
And yes, we glue it from separate pieces to make it stable. Because otherwise it just start to bend because of humidity or absence of it. So actually, it's really for me exciting moment because you can try yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm really
very experienced musician and reviewer. Like first impressions from this new instrument. So I just briefly explain the main functions. Here we have note sensors, and it recognizes heat and slow attack and amplitude vibrato, and also recognizes.
Oh, so this is when this moves.
Yes, yes. So see.
Right, so it's got a motion sensor in it as well, accelerometer.
Yes, this is motion sensor. So movements of Terra body will cause timbre change in this algorithm. And you can modify pitch of these note sensors using this pitch shifter.
Yeah.
So and all combinations of it also creates different pitch.
So are you assigning that for just this, or is this for the whole scale that you're doing that now?
Yes, for the whole scale.
Okay.
So the easiest way is that this is plus octave, plus 2 octave, minus octave, minus 2 octaves.
Right.
And here timbre modifiers. So.
Extreme it can be as well, yeah.
Yeah, I like extremely things. So for me, it's usually I get angry with synthesizers design. Why, for example, LFO can go farther? Why only 20 Hz? Why not 2 kilohertz? I need more.
So. Audio, right? Are these different? These actual sensors, are they different to what we saw before? Have they been changed? Maybe the finish or something is a bit different.
The idea and the shape is the same, so just finishing different because we experiment with different lacquers, but the idea of this shape and size totally the same.
So the capacitive.
Yes, this is capacitive.
I mean, this is incredibly sensitive. I'm literally hardly touching it. So there's a lot of dynamic expression in this already. Okay.
So you can start with very, very quiet note.
Yeah.
So for me, like a reference were classical musical instruments with this huge expression palette and huge dynamic range. So I think it's really important because why we don't use it in synthesizers? We have so nice electronics.
It's true. Well, we've talked about this before, haven't we? I mean, part of it's to do with the consumption of the music. You know, you can't hear it over the engine of your car and you're listening it on the way to work. But to play, to get the performance. And it's interesting because we haven't touched any of the knobs. I mean, so sound generators and modifiers and pitch modifiers. Shifter. And then these are also touch sensors as well?
So this is extremely simple interface. So I was able to squeeze necessary parameters to this, let's say, triangle display indicator. So, for example...
So that's changing a preset, effectively, of the synth engine, yeah?
So, 64 variations for each algorithm, for example.
sounds very FM-like. Is it actually almost changing? It sounds like operators and feedback loops are being changed.
Something like this. So
Right.
this algorithm based on FM synthesis,
Right,
but
okay.
it's like a little bit next step, more developed using wave shapers, filters, etc. So.
And that's all happening inside under the hood. So there's a DSP chip of some kind that's running the digital sound engine. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So this is 100% digital.
Right.
Analog part only for making good digital to analog conversion.
Yeah. So you've built your own A to D and D to A converters in here to give the best.
Yeah. So I am very, very careful about quality of sound, microfactures, textures of sound, and
Right.
I build here all analog part myself. So it's hand built and specially designed output stage that uses separate parts, not just operational amplifier.
Discrete, which must be very helpful, particularly at the time when it's very hard to buy pre-made output and input stages. So if you're modifying them to work discreetly, that must be some advantage, I guess.
Of course. So to build high quality output stage for digital circuitry, it's not complex. It's just two operational amplifiers. But I don't satisfied with quality of sound. You know, so this problem, this comparison between analog and digital, usually analog wins. Why? Because it has so much textures, inner characters, colors, and I try to make the same. Because, for example, so before I had a lot of work with high-end stuff, and high-end usually often uses CD like an output, and this is like a special art how to build the digital to analog converter in artistical way.
Right.
So the special approach is like
has to be musical.
Yes, like very weak negative feedback loops, like put in special subtle distortion. So actually, it's not maybe obvious, but another digital world doesn't like totally clean, totally pure.
Perfection sounds horrible.
Yes, horrible. So it's just sounds like a mess exercises, not like a music.
So we've got different algorithms in here, and then these are variations on each algorithm. How do we change an algorithm completely?
So engine, and then you can dial something else, for example.
Wow, that's really different. So that's more of a percussive.
So yes.
I could see this being really useful for composing to music, where you can translate the expression through your fingers into much more dynamic and things that move over time.
Yes. So this is much more parameters on your fingertips than just on/off like conventional keyboards. So
and this is per note as well, isn't it? Yeah. So it's a polyphonic expression.
Yes.
Also, okay.
Yes.
It's like the taiko. So then, when you change engines, these become modifiers for each of the engines, or are they constant, always constant, these knobs?
So we have 5 knobs constant and 2 knobs like soft knobs. So here is timbre envelope release. So I have we have no attack here because you can form attack yourself.
Yeah.
Here release for note keyboard.
Yeah.
Here volume. This is like effects processor, time and mix and type of effects. And 2 soft knobs I mark it like sea and sun. So like water domain, for example, LFO frequency.
So you move
like waves, and sun domain, like for example, amount of distortion here. And
okay.
In all algorithms, they are different.
Right, okay, that makes sense. I mean, that follows quite a rate. That's a sort of a paradigm a lot of people will understand, because, I mean, we often see that with assignable knobs that then just affect the timbre of like an oscillator type or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, so when I was working on the interface, I tried to make it, in one hand, easy, and other hand, flexible, and with a lot of different possibilities, and also to make it like a pleasant journey.
Yeah,
so
sure.
you can just explore different algorithms, try different settings, and...
Well, let's have another sound, and then we can talk a little bit about... So these algorithms, or essentially each algorithm change is like a complete instrument in its own right.
Yes.
So does the user have access to those, or those things that you can then release more? If you wake up one morning and have a great idea, you can firmware, it can be updated in firmware at some point if you wanted to add another instrument.
Yes. So it can be upgradable endless.
Right.
So the idea is, when I try to think how I can build synthesizer in a conventional way, when I have a synthesis core and many parameters to bend it, I realized that I need really thousands of parameters.
Yeah.
But I don't like computer-like complex interfaces.
So you want it to be an expressive access to those rather than have everybody tweaking and
yes,
less.
So in my past, like a musician, like sound producer, I had really big pain, big headache. So I have an inspiration, I have a melody in my mind, and then I go to a synthesizers and spend a day just trying to get necessary timbre.
We call it friction, don't we? So you want to remove the friction from the creative process. So
yes, and I at the end of the day, I just completely lose my inspiration. Yeah. I forgot my melody, I forgot all my ideas, what for I came to this synthesizer.
Yeah,
okay, yeah. I got good timbre, but I lost music.
So the one thing that's interesting about this is you say, because we've got...
Here you have filter.
So this is filter, and there's... But I'm able to move, so I guess I could put this on my lap and move the whole thing like...
Yes, and it's very comfortable.
I've got it, yeah, if I do that. I mean, we've got it on a table here, but it could be, on as you sit. Interesting. And is there any other interfacing with this, or all of the interfacing happens with the fingers on these pads? There's no sort of control or whatever. It's all self-contained, yeah.
Yes. So, no, you can. So there is MIDI in, MIDI out, but for MIDI in, it just receives MIDI clock. So it was our voluntary design decision, because. Right. If you try to apply MIDI, you will kill immediately all this flexibility.
The resolution,
yes, the resolution and possibility to make conscious attack. So, and also, let's say, telling you secretly that I am afraid that guys start to use MIDI keyboard, because they know how to use MIDI keyboard, right. And here they need to learn. So, like, easiest, more lazy way to start using Terra, and better don't give them this opportunity.
Right, okay, so the idea is to make this into an instrument in its own right that you learn how to play from.
Yes.
So, but I mean, again, with some of the, there are expressive instruments. Okay, so let's see what's happening. With this level of expression, you don't necessarily have to be a virtuoso to perform with it, because, I mean, as you improve, you can do more clever note choices, but, I could... You can imagine the film scene almost from this. So that's hold.
This is hold, yes.
Yeah, interesting.
For example, such sound.
So we have some bass. It'll do wub.
And you see, Terra allows you to make smart glissando.
So this is a monophonic voice.
Yes. But glissando can be made.
Right. But the thing that's interesting, we can get this real rhythmic approach. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so there's some LFO action here. Someone's on the phone. We're in the office here, so at the factory, so obviously it's there's real life going on here as well. So this, I mean, how close is this? Is this ready to go? I mean, we are...
Yeah. So just last week's for enclosure, this is most complex part of this instrument because we never did wooden instruments before. So it's like...
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do because obviously, like you say, the original one that we saw was made from a solid piece of wood which would move all over the place. I mean, you know, you put it in a humid climate or you put it in the cold, you put it in the hot, it's going to bend and
Yes, this is the most danger and our really big challenge, how to make it from real wood.
Yeah.
And this is real wood, but make it stable, make it reliable in different climates. So.
Yeah, so for those of you who are interested, I know about this. So what you do is you butt pieces of wood together where the grain is. So you do it like this and like this, so that when there's any movement, it's not all in one direction. It pulls against itself. So you end up with a completely... The idea is when it does move, which it will, all it does is pull against itself rather than go in a completely different direction.
Yeah, exactly. And if you see the Terra that is closer to the final...
Oh, there's another one that we have as well.
Yes. So just a different version of wood.
So they'll be available in different finishes as well. Is that the idea?
I think yes. Like we did with Pulsar, like 5 different colors, and this is really nice game. So people will like different versions. And
so you can. It's almost like guitar bodies, isn't it? You can get involved in that.
Exactly. So the same shape, but with different finish and different woods.
And how are people responding to this? Because it's quite a unique concept, isn't it? As with all of your stuff, it sort of takes a little bit of a kind of jump to the left or jump to the right rather than the straight, narrow path. I mean, how are people responding to it?
People responded excellent. So they really adore and recognize Soma ideas, Soma new approaches. So they see that it's, first of all, real musical instrument.
Yeah.
It's not just a box with functions, some vision inside. And we have a really big waiting list for the moment.
Yeah.
People who wait.
This is ash, isn't it? I think.
So
different with a different finish.
Yes, and here we tried to make it like you see in the Terra that is closer to final version. You see now it's also from pieces, but you can't find the boundaries very different.
So you've got and that's down to the craftsmanship really in the wood selection of the wood. So there's quite a lot of hand. There's a hand-built aspect to this.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. And you've also got a kind of metal inlay here, which is that's lovely. Wow. So you must have started thinking about this a long time ago. I mean, it must be amazing to see it come to final fruition when you see it in the hands of people.
Yeah, so I think we will release Terra something like this March first.
Okay.
Pieces will go to first users. I think it will be reviewers, of course, and our friends, musicians, so we need a kind of beta testing before real mass production. For me, it's very important moment when I see my instruments in hand of other musicians, real people, because I, of course, little afraid each time that people will not grasp the ideas or they will reject something.
I can imagine in some ways this might be an ideal instrument for somebody who's maybe not already learnt the discipline of a keyboard, but they may be a guitarist or something, so that they're not applying their preconceived knowledge to the way that it works. I mean, I'm a keyboard player primarily, but I still kind of get my head around the way it works. That's really... So these are sensitive as well. The timbral changes are also touch sensitive.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
okay, so between them there's a massive... That's got plenty of stuff down there. Let's try another couple of sounds before we wrap up. Let's
try this one. Need to remember what is.
So does each recall have a different set of scales for? Does it have a different pitch layout for these? Because I notice there are 12 buttons, and they don't necessarily correspond to 12 semitones of an octave. They could
absolutely. I will try to show you absolutely not semitonical presets.
That's great. That's going through all of the vowels, isn't it? That's interesting. That's says ooh, ya, Allah. Yeah, nice.
Crazy robot singing.
Yeah. So you were talking about the scale. We were talking about the scales for these. So can you have it set to semitones? I mean, how would you set the scale of it?
Very easy. So see.
And is that per note?
Yes,
so
yes.
Then, so they, by doing this and doing this, you're setting the pitch and the scale of that pad, and then you change the...
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can tune it semitonically or microtonal, see. It goes up.
And where does that... Is that a state that is remembered on power cycle? Because that'd be
Of course, I can save everything, and we have 96 presets here that remember all settings.
So you can have the scale set up and then switch engines from within the scale setup, right?
Yes. So you can save settings for this pitch shifter, for notes, for these 64 variations for each.
So once
engine.
you've set it up how you want, you can make it yours and keep it that way.
Yeah.
Right?
So I did, on my opinion, good decision. So I keep presets on keyboards, so you can launch it very quickly like this.
Because that's got a clock-based thing, that could be getting its clocking from externally, so that you'd be in sync with.
Yes, and so you can launch different sound very easy. You need not to scroll through all algorithms. So
what's the polyphony?
So it depends on algorithms, from 12 notes to 1.
Right. Okay.
So maximum is 12.
Right, which would be a challenge to play with one hand anyway, unless you've got holes. You could build up chords, I guess, and make that.
Yes. So
interesting.
That is why also I decided to make different algorithms, not just one flexible synthesis structure, because then I can tune very precisely the best from this approach, also considering CPU power.
Right, and it makes a lot of sense, because then each preset or each engine becomes an instrument in its own right with its own set of expressive controls. It's similar in a way. I mean, we talked about Haken before. It's a similar kind of concept, whereas nobody really feels comfortable programming the engine, but they love to play it because it gives them all of this expression, and you're going for a similar approach in that sense. That
yes, and actually I think Haken is a real genius and a visionary person. So the same like this continuous fingerboards. So I really he is like one of my references. What is good approach is.
Yeah, but it's. I mean, I can't stress how sensitive this is. It's really. Oh, Star Wars. Fantastic. So, it's going to be out shortly. Have you fixed a price yet, or is that still something that you're working on?
Price is a kind of. Also
I mean, that's really hard at the moment, isn't it?
Pain, because today components market became much more expensive, and labor and taxes and everything. So we always struggle for minimal possible price for our instruments. So it looks like, so we promised that we will have for this version below 1,000 euros, but seems to be we will need to go a little bit up. So not too much, but just question to survive. So actually, you know, many manufacturers just simply closed this time. So we try to still.
So you were, when we saw you at Superbooth, you were talking about another version which was not so beautifully custom made. It was more about the control and the sensors, which would be maybe a steel case or something. Is that something that you're still looking at?
Yes. So we will have, I hope, like totally custom version that made from real piece of wood found in the forest. So my idea is to make possible that each Terra in this custom, totally custom version will be a unique art sculpture.
Right.
So I tried a little bit to give these impressions using this unusual shape that maybe resembles some beast from a forest, or maybe old-time acoustic instruments. So in old-time people never did like just pure square, you know, because it's soulless. So they need to feel something like emotional vibes when they touch.
I mean, these kind of edges have a sort of,
And actually it's very comfortable. So you see, when you play, this is very comfortable place for your hands here. And the same like in your laps, it's also very comfortable. And the same for sockets design. So here we have MIDI inputs, outputs, and USB for reflection firmware.
But I guess if you put it in a steel box, it wouldn't have the same tactile vibe, I suppose.
And not only, so this is super precise capacitive measurement system. I can't use metallic objects inside because they will suck sensitivity.
Right.
So that is why it can be so sensitive. You see, so it's really unique situation when you can launch sound but by tiniest movements.
Yeah, fantastic. Vlad, thank you very much.
Maybe...
I'd love to, I'll have a play as well. That's nice. This affects different note groupings as well. So
this is release for this part,
right.
And this is release for this one. And also we have like shortcut in all big releases like this. So you can play staccato immediately without tweaking knobs.
Nice. Lots of little nooks and crannies to find, yeah.
And also it's shorten reverb and delay time.
Yeah, just tightens it all up.
Yes, immediately, just by one movement, and go back if you need.
That's quite dense, that. Is that just a saw? And there's a modulator. That's interesting. So you effectively got, it's like a tri-timbral thing with its own expression.
Yes, and all timbre control.
Oh, nice.
So actually I wonder why we still use the keyboard in so boring way. Actually it's just an array of buttons. You can assign very different functions to all of it.
Yeah, well, they did start to get there with key group switching for samples, but actually you could use that to bring expressive things. And I think Arturia did a really cool thing where they, rather than polyphonic expression, they did a rule-based aftertouch. So it can take a regular aftertouch keyboard, but apply it to, it's almost like sostenuto, you know, so you get one, the left hand gets one aftertouch setting and the right hand gets another aftertouch setting. So there's a sort of, so there are ways, and I'm sure we'll see more of that, but this is...
Yes, and we can go further with these ideas.
Yeah.
So just remove this stick in mind that this is piano. This is not piano, this is an array of switches.
Yeah. Interesting.
Also, I think it will inspire musicians more play, less draw.
Well, also, I mean, I guess to record the performance of this, you record it. I mean,
yes, sure.
You know, in the same way that, I mean, it's similar with things like Roley and Osmose. You know, I mean, yes, you could edit afterwards, but actually it's all about just play the thing and get it.
Yes.
You know, it's
or
probably
C15 from nonlinear
yes,
lab.
exactly.
They also even had no MIDI input in
for
the
a while,
first
I think they, but it's all about, because of all of those instruments, what they have in common is a very wide dynamic range in terms of what can be played with your hands. So you want to capture as much of that as possible. And I guess audio is probably the makes the most sense.
Yeah. So as an alternative of programming, so you know, it's better play, not program. So actually, it's different approaches, of course. But I hope this will help people develop these approaches of playing synthesizer, not program synthesizers, in all ways.
Yeah, I'm into that.